It's your Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, July 1st. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is excited to talk potential trades with our friends from Locked On LA Kings today.
Yeah, let's do it.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and happy Friday. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here with Russ Cohen, who's on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. Keep up to date on all our episodes and Flyers news. You can also email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. On today's show, we've got a little bit of Flyers news. Then we're going to get straight into our conversation with Sarah Avampato from Locked On LA Kings and talk about the Fiala deal and what that means for potential other trades with the Kings for the rest of this offseason. Super fun conversation. Excited to bring you that. And then we will wrap with our gritty thing of the week. Locked On Flyers is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you're listening right now. Hit that subscribe button. Check us out over on YouTube and drop us some likes and subscribe over there as well. All right, Russ. We are constantly getting news about the Flyers from not the Flyers these days. So we got news on one more preseason game on the calendar, September 27th in Buffalo. So we got that courtesy of the Buffalo Sabres and their preseason schedule announcement. And we got some news about Flyers development camp, which again, we haven't heard anything about thus far.
I haven't gotten one email yet.
So that is very odd. But we learned from the Moncton Wildcats of the Q Junior League that their goaltender, Jonathan Lemieux, got an invite to Dev Camp. And obviously camp invites are provisional and it's usually some sort of connection there. But it's a good chance for guys like this to get exposed to NHL teams and systems and just learn a lot from the coaches that are there.
Yeah, mostly that's what happens. But, they've signed Phil Myers that way. I remember JT Brown came through. They didn't sign him, but then he got signed after that. What JVR's brother, Trevor, was in development camp, didn't get signed. Then he got signed after. So, yeah.
That's how we got Jackson Cates, brother of Noah Cates as well. So again, Jonathan Lemieux is a goaltender. He split this past season with Moncton and St. John, who just won the Memorial Cup.
He missed out, though.
He did miss out. Lemieux's had a pretty high goals against average, almost 4 at 3.95 and 896 save percentage with Moncton in 22 games. But again, Moncton was not a very good team. So no. I think there's a lot to that. But looking forward to seeing him there and looking forward to finding out more information about Dev Camp soon from the Flyers, hopefully.
Yeah, like when in July it'll be, so I could block out the time. Yeah, it would be great.
And one other little rumor out there that I think I wanted to talk about, just because there have been some discussions amongst Flyers people that they should try and get DeBrincat. Because he is kind of on the trading block, and that the ask for him would be 3 first-round picks, or the equivalent of 3 first-round picks in terms of players and those pick themselves. It just seems astronomically high, right?
Well, he's a 40-goal scorer in the NHL. There's not a lot of them. So you can ask for that. And I know every Flyers fan will try and figure out some of their not great first round picks and let's put them all in the basket and hope you get them. You're not going to get them that way. The Flyers don't have anything they could really trade for them. Like, they're not a good trade partner for them.
Yeah, I just don't think that you're going to get a big impact player like that through a trade. It's going to be through free agency, if at all, just because the Flyers, again, like we've been talking about, don't have the assets for a deal like this. But the Flyers could have some assets to get something out of the LA Kings, who have some cap space and are on the move for next season. So with that, here is our conversation with Sarah Avampato from Locked On LA Kings. All right, we are so thrilled to welcome to the show Sarah Avampato, who is the host of Locked On LA Kings for at least the next little bit, but definitely one of the best on the network and LA Kings expert here. So we wanted to bring her onto the show to talk about potential trade options with the Flyers. But first off, there was a huge wrench put into potentially some of those possibilities when, lo and behold, the LA Kings made a deal with the Minnesota Wild for Kevin Fiala. So what is the hot take on that deal in terms of what the trade was and then the contract that he signed?
So it's one of those rare times where I feel like Kings fans are all pretty much on the same page. That doesn't happen very often because there's always a group of people who are mad about it. And there's always going to be someone who's mad about this anyway. But for the most part, the reaction in the fan base, within the media, from the guys on the team is that they're pretty excited about this. The Kings have been looking to add scoring. That's always been one of their biggest problems. They have lots of guys who like to shoot the puck and a lot of guys who can't finish. And Kevin Fiala, particularly in this past season when he sort of broke out with the Wild, showed that he can be that guy. And so it's a move that instantly makes the team better. Like any long-term contract, could it be iffy in the later years? Maybe, particularly if he, doesn't pan out, if he continues to be kind of streaky. I know it took him sort of a while to get established in his career. It's just been the past couple of seasons that he's really started to break out with the Wild. So, is the Kevin Fiala that scored 33 goals last year, is that who he's going to be in the future? The Kings are banking on that. It's one of those deals where if it gets the Kings into a better playoff race, if it gets them another Stanley Cup in a couple years, no one's going to, people are always going to complain about something, but it's a move you're not going to complain about because it makes the team a lot better. And it's one of those trades that whenever the opposing team or whenever fans of other teams are like, wait, that's all they gave up, it was a good deal. Kings gave up their first round pick and a pretty highly rated defensive prospect, but they have a ton of those. And so if that's the price you pay to get a guy like Kevin Fiala, you do it.
Well, I'm going to play the other end for a minute just to tell you that they don't have a ton of Brock Fabers. He's really highly thought of. And actually, when I went to World Junior Camp this past year before the tournament was supposed to start and then didn't finish, he was their second best defenseman behind Jake Sanderson. He has even gotten better than I thought he would get. His speed, the way he can play a lot of different roles. This guy could play like a 2 or 3 or a 4. So they don't grow on trees like that. And Minnesota is going to lose Dumba at some point. And so, that fits for them. Now, it's fair to say LA always has a cupboard full of defensemen because of Mark Yannetti. Yes. And I've chatted with him about that many times. So that's fair. And the 19th overall pick is going to give him a pretty good pick too. This is a good trade for LA. It's just, he's not going to be an 85-point guy every year.
Right.
He's probably a 65-point guy. And that's fine. I think once he broke away, Fiala, I've always been high on Fiala. Really liked him in his draft year. I think once he broke away from Nashville, that was a big thing because he's not going to be a responsible two-way guy. That's just not his game. He'll do his best, but he don't expect much on the away from the puck stuff. But as far as scoring, he could score.
Yeah, and I think putting him. I think that the plan right now, it seems like, is he's going to play with Anze Kopitar.
Yeah.
Who, I don't care if you're playing with Anze Kopitar, I don't care if you're bad defensively because you have one of the best defensive centers in the league. So it's one of those.
Yeah, he's got your back.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say that, obviously prior to that deal, Brock Faber was somebody on my radar as somebody that could be potentially in a deal with the Flyers. Obviously, he went to Minnesota, where he's from, and and played there.
Mhm.
But I'm thinking Chuck Fletcher, ooh, Minnesota boy, that's a carrot he would go
Mhm.
for. So I think that, obviously with all his potential that Russ just talked about, as
Yeah.
well as him being a Minnesota boy, I thought he would have been a good fit for the Flyers.
Yeah. It was a deal that I both hated. Like, I loved it because I was excited about Kevin Fiala, but yeah, like you said, Russ, like Brock Fabers don't grow on trees, and he's a guy whose stock has only gone up. But knowing that he, I feel like there's always the fear with any free agent or with any college player of, is he going to get to the end of his eligibility and choose not to sign? There's always that fear.
Sure.
I never really heard that as a concern from the Kings, that they were pretty set that he would sign when he was done. But yeah, it's a move that hurts. He's going to be a great defenseman, I think, for a long time for the Wild. But the Wild especially love a good hometown boy
Oh, yeah.
comes home story.
They do.
So.
And the Kings have Brant Clark, so they'll be okay with that. I wanted to.
All right, we'll have more with Sarah coming up right away. But first, we're going to hear about our friends at Bet Online.
BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league review, and news, including Major League Baseball and all the info leading up to next year's NFL, NBA, and NHL seasons. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, tennis, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
The NHL draft is right around the corner, and our team of local hosts and draft experts at Locked On NHL are breaking it down with insights and analysis for every first round pick. So subscribe to Locked On Flyers on YouTube for all the latest breakdowns with every Flyers pick and more. And now back to our conversation with Sarah from Locked On LA Kings.
I wanted to ask you about Gabe Velardi because he had a really good year in Ontario. The Kings are also loaded with centers. So, like, if you were looking for something in trade with the Flyers, I would think Velardi could be a guy in play because he doesn't make a lot of money. There's not a great spot for him. He's got size. The Flyers look for size. He can play center or wing, although I still think he can play center. And, maybe there's something on the Flyers the Kings would want for him.
Yeah, I think Gabe Velardi it's one of those ones where, again, like, it kind of hurts to say, like, oh, this guy's expendable at this point. But the truth of the matter is he has been kind of passed up in the depth chart. I think he's a player that still has a lot of potential, and I think needs the right coaching staff / mentorship / whatever to really unlock that. And for whatever reason, he hasn't necessarily been a good fit with the Kings. He and Todd McClellan don't seem to have really been on the same page about what they want from him. I know there's always been some kind of concerns with, he's a little bit of a weird kid, a little bit of a beats to the tune of his own drummer, kind of fits that profile of player who was always the best at everything and doesn't really know how to adapt now that he's not the best on the team. There have been some kind of issues with, okay, you actually do need to work to improve. You can't just like go out and keep doing the same thing. But I think that he has a ton of potential. And I just think that there may not be a spot on the Kings for him to do that. So as much as it would be kind of a disappointment to quote unquote give up on him, he is a player that I would be looking at for. It wouldn't be the end of the world if the Kings had to package him in a trade.
That was going to be my question on a guy like him. Is he part of a bigger package, or is he somebody you make a deal with on his own?
Probably depends what you're trying to hunt down. I think the Kings right now, he's a restricted free agent. He's not going to, get that much money with his next contract because he hasn't really proven himself yet. If the Kings are going hunting for, let's say that mythical top pairing left defenseman who they continue to not have, something like Velardi, a prospect, a pick, might be what they have to do to move it out. They're kind of in a position where I don't know that they're going to need a whole lot more up front. But again, Rob Blake, if someone's going to call him, I think he's going to listen, because he is in a position right now where he knows he needs to keep making this team better to help him make the next step.
So what exactly are the remaining biggest needs for the Kings now? So we can kind of tailor our trade proposals to match up with that.
I think that, I mean, like I mentioned, that left side of the defense is something I think they're always kind of looking for something to fill out. I know that, Jake Chitrin is the one that everyone talks about. I feel like every team is trying to get him. I think the price is probably too high. Some people say it's probably not worth it, whatever. In terms of the right side of the defense, I mean, they obviously just moved out Brock Faber. They have so many guys who can play that right side that, they're not really looking there. I mean, this is a team that is always looking for scoring. But now that, we have essentially the top two lines kind of seem to be locked down with, Fiala, Kopitar, Kempe potentially as your top line. Your second line, I imagine they're going to come back with the Arvidsson, Danault, Moore line that was really good last season, which leaves your bottom six as to kind of a jumble. So, I know one thing that fans at least are always saying the Kings need more of is we need more size. We need more physicality. Like, they have Brendan Lemieux, but he's Brendan Lemieux.
He's mostly an idiot on the ice.
Yes, you said it, not me, but yes. So looking for people in that depth scoring kind of category who, can contribute, who aren't going to be a liability, aka Brendan Lemieux, I think would be something that they may be still looking to add for.
So that kind of brings me to, it's a weird situation with the Flyers right now, because like the way you're talking, it seems like if the Flyers were in a better spot defensively and Ryan Ellis wasn't like on LTIR for the rest of eternity, like we could then say, well, how about Ivan Provorov? Like, what do you, like, there's a deal to be made there. I really think there is. And especially given those needs and what we could potentially get in return in terms of, is Quentin Byfield on the table?
No.
Well, no. Some have said that he is.
I don't believe he is either.
But
I would like to talk to those people because I think they're wrong. You don't.
I agree.
I will fight you.
But in all seriousness, I do think that, if the Flyers, I think we're in a slightly better position, we could be saying, all right, let's shake it up here, give you Ivan Provorov, and let's get, a pick from the Kings, although you have one less that we would have wanted from the Fiala deal, I think, or what is it, a previous deal. But nonetheless, I think that, we could at least get a second rounder back for next year. Plus maybe a player and an AHL kind of prospect. So for a guy like Provy right there, right?
Well, but I could still throw in, Travis Sanheim, because if the Flyers find out that they can't re-sign him, the Kings have cap space, and that would be a guy I think they'd be interested in.
And I mean, that's kind of essentially the deal they just had to make for Kevin Fiala. Of the Wild knew that they can't re-sign him because they're in, cap purgatory for the next however many years. And I know that one of the reactions from Wild fans was like, I can't believe this is all we got for Kevin Fiala, but you're kind of hamstrung. That you kind of have to take what you're going to get, because teams know that, they have no leverage. And so that's certainly a deal that, Rob Blake just made one of those deals, and he clearly is not afraid of trading for a guy who they're going to have to negotiate a new deal with.
Yeah, and that's where like Provy is kind of locked in, so it's not it's something that you wouldn't have to worry about. I think that there are several options there. I think Gabe Velardi, like Russ said, is an interesting option there as well. But thinking just from an offensive side of things as well for the Kings, like, is there a market for Travis Connectny?
I mean, I would like there to be a market for Travis Connectny. He's always been a delightful player, for me to watch. It's one of those things where I feel like if the Kings were to acquire him, then the question becomes, where do you put him? Because I don't know that he's going to be best suited in a bottom six role. I don't think that's really where he belongs. So then they'd have to.
He won't produce as well. He won't.
Right. You need him. As fun as he is to watch, as like that, like grinder energy guy, like plays bigger than he is. yeah, he definitely should be a guy who's in your top 6, which would mean they have to start reevaluating which players go where. But I mean,
Although
Travis
to be
Connectny to the Kings has been, since he got drafted by the Flyers, I've been like, how do I get him to the Kings?
I mean, it's not like Arvidsson's lighting it up. There may be a
Yeah.
point where he does get moved down in the lineup.
Yeah, yeah. So there's flexibility. I mean, if you want to deliver Travis Connectny to the King, like, well, I'll take it. It's fine.
I mean, I'll tell you what I would look for. I would look for Helgi Grans, Velardi. I mean, if I could get Helgi Grans and Velardi, great. If I could get Helgi Grans and, a couple of seconds, yeah, I'd probably do that too.
Yeah.
Like a second this year, second next year, something like that.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of, similar to when they moved out Brock Faber, of looking at that side of the defense going, we have a lot of these guys. And I know people are really excited about Grans as a player, and, it's going to take him a little while still. He's still very young, but, is a promising defenseman, looked fine in his first year in the AHL. And so it's one of those ones where, yeah, it would hurt. But if the caliber of player you're getting is a proven player like a Travis Connectny, do you say no? Especially if you know that you have a finite window of time to chase another cup while guys like Kopitar are still there. I don't know that I'd say no.
Yeah, and Grans could be a top 4 for the Flyers in a couple of years. And at that point, we'll probably be not even talking about Ryan Ellis anymore, so you need it.
Yeah, and that's where I'd say, like, even the second rounder would have to be next year's and not this year's, because, like, for the Kings, without a first round pick this year.
Oh, they don't have a first. Yeah, they wouldn't.
Yeah, they would not give up the second without having a first this year. So I do think that would be a factor as well, because, like, I personally am itching to get into the second round of the draft this year for the Flyers, but next year is not too shabby either. So I think, like, getting back into the second round next year would also be a good option. But yeah. So Russ, you got any other proposals?
No, but I did want to ask just a general question, because right now I've been told by an insider that the reason Quick's still there, he had a good year, don't get me wrong, is because they're a little down on Cal Peterson. So I kind of wonder, are they going to keep that duo together forever, or are they going to maybe try and deal Cal Peterson?
Yeah, I mean, this is one where I feel like you don't want to wait and see what happens. But I do agree that there is that concern within the organization of, everyone was prepared for Jonathan Quick to go off into the sunset and Cal Peterson to rise up and take over a starter. And he just did not have it last year. And, I think we all know goalies are very weird, cerebral creatures, and just the slightest thing can suddenly have a terrible year and then you bounce back. And I think the Kings have done historically a good job working with goalies. And so my hope is, I'm sure the organization's hope is, that Cal Peterson becomes who they invested in and who they thought he was going to be. But yeah, it has thrown a huge wrench, I think, into their plans of, here's our new starter, because he hasn't really claimed that. So I think that it would be, and I think they would maybe listen to offers, but I think they all know that, Jonathan Quick is not going to continue to play at the same, like, that level that he did last year. Like, he's going to go back downhill. And there's really no one in the system behind him that I think is ready for the NHL yet. So it's a move where, if they're sending out Cal Peterson, they're going to need to get back a goaltender who can play and who they're going to have confidence in. So, not the guy who's like, oh, well, you maybe stopped a puck.
Right. Well, it's interesting because, it's a pretty expensive contract, and it's got a no move. So they would have to get him to waive that. That is definitely, I would say, the stickiest situation that the Kings have going on this offseason. So definitely worth keeping an eye on that. And it seems like they're in a really good position from a UFA standpoint too, that there's, like, nobody, they're desperate to get re-signed, that if they walked, they could live.
Right. Yeah. It looks, most of the guys who are UFAs, I'm like, all right, goodbye. If they brought Alex Edler back on, like, a 1-year deal, I think Edler did a lot better than anyone expected from him. And to have him as a mentor for the young guys, especially, they have a lot of young Swedish kids. I don't think anyone would object to him coming back to be that 6'7" defenseman. But even if that one doesn't happen,
You know what I
fine.
figured though? Like one of my other questions is, I think they could bring in Justin Braun and just plug him in.
Hmm.
He knows the
Yeah.
West.
Yeah.
They need that kind of guy. He'd be cheap, and I
Hmm.
think they could do that. I think that would help them. The other question that I had for you is, so now that Fiala signed, is that you think kill the hunger for Philip Forsberg that we were hearing about?
I mean, if there's a deal there, I'm sure that Rob Blake is still working the phone to try to see if he can make something happen. They'd have to move money back out, which I think would be the harder part of, okay, sure, you just signed, you signed Fiala to 7.8 some $million a year. Forsberg's going to get at least 8, no matter where he goes, probably more. I know the latest rumors out of Nashville were in the 8s for him. So
Only
you're going to
because
have
they have a
to,
tax break
yeah,
there. So in
true.
LA, it's going to be more.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that if you can get Philip Forsberg, amazing. But that's kind of when you start getting into, not everyone can be Las Vegas and play gymnastics like
Yeah.
24/7.
Right.
Because all they
You
would
know,
have to do is trade a pick for the rights, because I don't think Nashville's
mhm,
going to be able to retain them. And you could do that. I was just curious, but I see
yeah.
your point too.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the cap is real, no matter how much teams like Vegas and Tampa want us to not think it's real. So, is it possible? Yes, but they'd have to really start looking at, okay, are we moving out Adrian Kempe? Are we moving out Alex Iafallo? How do we afford him, knowing that it's going to be a long-term deal for Forsberg? He's not going to sign somewhere just for 1 year for fun.
Right. Well, speaking of that, it's always fun to mention in a conversation about the LA Kings that the Kings are still paying out on the Mike Richards contract
They
to
are.
this
They
day
are.
and for
They
several more years to come.
My friends and I have a calendar invite in all of our calendars for whatever it is, 2032 or something, that they stopped paying him. And it's the like happy Mike Richards isn't getting paid by the Kings anymore day. We're all going to, no matter what part of the world we have all dispersed to, we're probably all just going to get together, have some champagne. Maybe we'll go up to Kenora and actually find Mike Richards and toast him.
Yeah. God bless Mike Richards. All right. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a ton of fun. And where can people find you out there?
So you can find me on Twitter at Right Said Sarah. It's WRITE said Sarah with an H. Locked on Kings is at Locked on LA Kings on Twitter, where I still will be providing, bizarre Twitter updates like, does Kevin Fiala have a dog? Which is really the important question to ask about any new player. And of course,
True.
available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right. Once again, thank you so much to Sarah Avampato from
Yeah,
Locked On LA Kings. That was a great conversation.
it was.
And it's exciting to talk to somebody whose team is like on the move, like, and getting better. And
Yeah, they did it the
very,
right way. They built it. They said we have to rebuild this. They said it would take a certain amount of time. I remember saying 2 years ago I felt they were ahead of schedule, and last year they showed that they were ahead of schedule. So good for them.
yeah, I think so too. And it was good to get her take on the Kevin Fiala trade as
Yes.
well, just to see if she thought it was a good move for them ultimately, especially considering what they gave up in return. So
Hmm.
good to hear that she's excited about it as well. All right, we will be wrapping up our week with Gritty as we always do. But heading into next week, man, I can't believe it. Draft week is finally here.
Yeah.
And so we are going to be talking a lot about that. Hopefully, not getting last minute jitters or second guessing ourselves or the Flyers second guessing themselves with who they want to pick.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna second guess. You just hope the first guess is a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like we said at the top of the show, we haven't gotten much news about development camp or the
No.
preseason schedule yet. So hopefully by the time you're listening to this, we already have that information in our hands. We can start planning for that and all the great content we'll have on this show talking about that. Development camp, especially, it's just always good to get a read on some of the prospects in a less pressured environment than training camp, where development camp is really about their progress, and what they have learned over the past year.
Although the downside is you all go to lunch together, and sometimes those guys eat a lot, and they'll be ahead of you in line at like Chipotle or Pancheros, and that's then it's like every man for himself.
Well, good thing I don't go to Chipotle then.
Yeah, I'm a Pancheros guy. So.
Yeah, Chipotle puts too much cilantro on things, and I'm one of those people where cilantro tastes like soap, so can't eat at Chipotle. But before we go, just a couple of gritty things. One of them completely out of left field, but the first one was put out on TikTok by the Flyers on the Gritty account. Is a meme about going right to jail. And it's Gritty putting a small child in a goalie net flipped around as if he's in prison, and it's very cute and very gritty.
Yeah, I would say that's very gritty.
And then the other thing is very, very weird, but the company Nerf, that makes like Nerf guns and stuff like that, they created their very first mascot called Murph. So like Nerf Murph, I guess, is the rhyme, and that's why they named it Murph. But I think people were comparing it to Gritty in some ways because there's like orange in it, so it's just like kind of floofy and has like an irreverent attitude, it seems, based on what it looks like.
Well, I'm sure he's a gun owner. We could start there.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, yeah, you do know. Nerf makes tons of guns.
Gun.
Yeah.
But in terms of how it looks like, almost, I'm trying to figure out the word to describe it, because it's like a multicolored just floof with no discernible features, but is wearing a gold chain around his neck. So,
yeah, I don't know. Nerf needed to do something like 20 years ago when they were still sort of relevant. I think they've fallen out of it.
Yeah, but it's just really not necessarily the look is the comparison to Gritty, but like the feel and the attitude about it, and being quote unquote irreverent. But I don't know, man. This is like if he's like made out of 10,000 Nerf darts, which okay. But on that weird note, we will end the show for today and the week. Thanks for listening. Of course, we'll be back on Monday with all the latest Flyers news heading into draft week. We'll have our nemesis of the week. I am sure it'll be draft related because of it being that particular week. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. We'll have one more mailbag before the draft, so send in your questions via Twitter at LockedOnFlyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, or you can drop us a comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks again for listening, and have a great weekend.